All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Everett, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm looking around YouTube and it's like, what does every great YouTube channel have? It was obvious, it's tier lists. I decided to start it off with a banger, really, and I am going to be ranking the top volleyball countries in the world. First and foremost, we're going to break down the criteria of how I determine things. So the criteria is going to be your international rankings, both men and women, beach and indoor, and that's an important one. Okay, you have to be good across all the platforms. If you're just good in one, maybe you're just good at men's indoor, maybe you're just good at women's beach, you're probably going to get a lower score. So those are going to be the main ones, is your international rankings between men and women, beach and indoor. The next criteria we're going to have is the quality of your pro leagues. Do you have pro leagues? North America, looking at you, we need to get better. But if you do have a pro league, where's the quality stand? Where does it rank in terms of pay, in terms of quality of play, quality of players? Another criteria that we're going to be looking at is the culture. So the culture of volleyball within the country. So that could be everything from development, how many good players are coming out of your country. Once again, men, women, indoor, beach. How big is the sport? How popular is the sport? How relevant is the sport? And then finally, how much money do you put in the sport? How many events do you host? How much do you add to the sport overall? So as I said, I think we've got about 27 or so of some of the top volleyball countries and some of the not so great volleyball countries in the world, and I'm going to rank them. Obviously, if you're a fan of Volleyball Source, you know that we're going to be using the Ronnie Cuban Spike tier list. So we've got Ultra, Super, Hyper, Mega, and Thanks for Participating. Now, obviously, Thanks for Participating is the only one that really makes sense. All the other ones are very subjective, but that's what Ronnie chose, and we've clowned him for it. So that's what we're going to be using in perpetuity as long as Volleyball Source is around. And if this is the first time you're seeing some of our content, welcome. I invite you to join us over on our Discord. We've got 1,000+ volleyball fans from around the world who are always, talking and chatting about high-level volleyball stuff. So if you're a hardcore fan, come join us on the Volleyball Source Discord, and you can clown Ronnie a little bit for this tier list. Before we get started as well, this is a bias list. I think that goes without saying, right? Me looking at, like the quality of pro leagues and the culture that various countries have is very subjective. Let's just jump into it. All of these countries are ranked alphabetically, and we're just going to go with that because I've seen a few tier lists where people do all the S's first and the A, and it's no fun. So we're going to do it alphabetically, and to start off that, we're going to start with the A's. We're going to go down to South America, and we're going to go to Argentina. Argentina is the first one. Now, if you're a Canadian fan like myself, you know of the quality of Argentina. You know how many times they've beat us, especially on the men's side, but the women's side, not as strong. 8th in the world on the men's side. Of course, got bronze at the last Olympics. 22nd in the world on the women's side. For beach, the rankings are a little bit skewy, let's say, because teams are always moving around and, it's the beginning of the season. So the rankings on the beach are going to be a little less accurate, let's say. But ultimately, their highest ranked team for the men is 27th, and their highest ranked team for the women is 51st. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think their women are probably higher ranked than that. For pro, I gave them a B level because I think their pro league is actually pretty good. And for culture, I'm actually going to give them an A. They care about volleyball. They do well. And they've got some good development systems. They've got some fantastic players playing around the world. So ultimately, I have Argentina ranked as ranked as hyper level, right in the middle. Having the women ranked at 27, not being that relevant in the beach scene kind of hurts them. But you could maybe almost make an argument for A, but this is where we're going to start them. We're going to start them at the B level. All right, moving on. Next up, we have Australia. Now, this one is a little bit tougher. When you look at how well these programs were doing at the beginning of the 2000s, around when you're hosting the Sydney Olympics, to now, it's hurt a little bit. Of course, the men dropped out of Nations League this past year. The women aren't even ranked, and the FIVB rankings go now only to the 70s or something like that. So the women aren't even ranked. The men's on the beach, they're hanging around. They got 20th and 23rd. The women, though, are ranked second in the world, and of course making it all the way to the finals at the 2020 or 2021 Olympics. So, but all in all, no pro leagues, bad culture. Preston, you know I love you. You're going down to work on that men's team. Men's team currently ranked 39th. Women's team not even ranked. Unfortunately, Australia, for me, you're going in the D tier. Thanks for participating. Have a cookie and see you later. Next up, the first one of the Bs, we have Belgium. Now, Belgium is an interesting one. I would say that they're both pretty relevant on the international stage, both men and women. Of course, the women got absolutely shafted this past year of the Nations League, winning more matches than Korea won sets, but still getting knocked out, and then lost to Croatia in that Volleyball Challenger Cup. Their women are currently ranked just outside of the top 10 at 11. Their men are ranked at 21st. No representation for them on the beach. I'm not entirely sure. Do they like volleyball? Do they not? You know, it kind of remains to be seen. Their pro leagues for me are actually pretty good. Of course, we saw Knack Roselaire go all the way to the finals of the CEV Cup this year. Much better on the men's side, not too relevant on the women's side, and the culture is all right. You know, they have a few good players. Sam Daru, Britt Herbots are the big ones that come to mind, but they don't really host all that often. So for me, Belgium is going to be going in the mega tier, all right, the C tier. Next up, this one is obvious. This if you're ranking Brazil anywhere but the ultra tier, you're crazy. And you can come have a chat with me, and you know we'll go out back and duke it out. Brazil is the mecca of the sport. They produce some of the best players. They're fantastic on the beach. They're fantastic indoor, right? 4th for the men, 3rd for the women. Their highest men's team is ranked 2nd. Their highest women's teams are ranked 1st and 3rd. Sorry, that's on the beach side. Their pro leagues are fantastic. Their culture is unparalleled. Brazil, to me, first team in that S tier, the ultra tier. They got to be there. They got to be there. There's no question about it. I don't even know why we're still talking about this. All right, next up, Bulgaria. Now, Bulgaria was an interesting one. I did a decent amount of research, and if you know me, you know that I've been following volleyball now for a few years now. I would say over a decade, and Bulgaria is a country that has been maybe struggling a little bit of late, and I expect it to be a little bit better. The highest rank for me for Bulgaria is their culture, because I think that they produce some pretty good players. They love volleyball, right? All of those former Soviet countries just love volleyball. But at the end of the day, you know, their pro leagues don't really do that well, especially at the Champions League, the CEV Cup level. And their national teams have really just been struggling this year. I think the men's team, currently ranked 23rd, is one of those teams on the chopping block for the VNL. And the women's team probably about the same. So the women's team is currently ranked in 16th, and Bulgaria is another team that just not anywhere to be found in beach volleyball on the world tour level. So because of all of that, and because my expectations for Bulgaria, I think are a little bit high, they should be a little bit higher, right? This is a country that once again loves volleyball. I'm going to be putting them in the mega tier, right? Because I expect more from you guys, Bulgaria. I really do, and I want to see that. All right, moving on. This is obviously the best one, I know. Team Canada, it's my home, it's my bread and butter. But I'm not saying that we're perfect in any way, shape, or form. I mean, first and foremost, we have no pro league, not even close, right? Nothing is going on the pro side here, beach or indoor. I would say our culture is bad. Our volleyball culture is bad. I gave us an F rating for volleyball culture. It's just not relevant. From the top, it's difficult, it's stale. The fact that we have success on the international stage to a certain extent is astonishing to me. And the fact that we've grown as much as we have is incredible. Currently ranked 15th on the men's side, 14th on the women's side. The women, y'all have been carrying us now for the past year or so. Big ups to you. Can't wait to see what you ladies do at the VNL this summer. Had a great World Championship. It was the best ever result for that team at the World Championship, so it's only up from here. Have some quality players playing in the best leagues in the world. We got some good stuff going. On the beach side, women, right now, our highest ranked team is 30th, but that's just because of the switch up with everything. Of course, Mel and Brandy playing together, Sarah, Sophie playing together, silver medal at the last World Championships, gold before then We've got quality all throughout the system. I would say that is no thanks at all to Volleyball Canada. I think the people within the program do well, those who run the program, but very little support from Volleyball Canada for our beach teams. And that's why we see on the men's side, Shakhtar Deering, our highest ranked team, is 30th. And I believe in them. I think they're going to make the Olympics, but they've got a long road to go. So for Canada, mostly because, we got 2 teams in the VNL, 2 straight Olympics for the men's team. The women are on the up. We've got players playing in some of the best leagues all across Europe. And of course, on the beach, we're going to be relevant, especially on the women's side. And this one's probably biased. Probably people are going to disagree with this one. I'm putting Canada up in the hyper tier. Moving forward now, China. And China is an interesting one because, as with everything with them, we don't really know much about what is happening with them. And of course, around the 2008 Beijing Olympics, they were fantastic. They're relevant on the beach. They're super relevant on the indoor. Now that is starting to fall. Now their men are even more so on the chopping block to get relegated out of VNL this year, 26 in the world. The women are 5th. But I do think that that's mainly due to past results, right? I don't think that really represents how strong they are right this moment. Men can't be found anywhere on the beach. Women, the highest ranked team is 19th. So, it kind of is what it is. Pro League, I gave them a C. I don't know if that's fair. I know they pay a lot and you've got some good athletes, but a shorter season, I don't get to see them at all. So I'm just going to go with a C. And if you disagree, you can let me know. Culture, I'm going to give them a B though. I think they actually care about volleyball. Maybe if they hosted a few more events, it would be a little bit better. But I mean, it's China, right? So all in all, I'm going to give China into the hyper tier, into the B level. Moving on, let's be honest, one of the best development and best culture countries we have in volleyball, it has to be Cuba. In terms of some of the legends who have played the game, Cuba has to be one of the best countries just in terms of the athletes that they produce. Leon, Simone, Maria Luis, Melissa Vargas right now playing for Turkey. But that's a big thing that all of the best players are playing for other countries. So their culture is strong, but of course the political situation there it doesn't really lead to much. So because of everything all considered, their men are ranked 12th. That is an inflated number and we know it. Beating up on Puerto Rico, Mexico, and Qatar doesn't grant, in my opinion, that 12th place. Those were the best teams that they beat last year, whereas other teams who had to compete at the VNL and compete in real competitions, not Mickey Mouse competitions, lost points. So the FIVB, we need to fix this a little bit. You can't be getting full points for beating Mickey Mouse teams. But at the end of the day, they're still some of the best athletes in the world. On the women's side, they're struggling a little bit more, 28th in the world. They're kind of in below, like you got USA, Dominican, Canada, Puerto Rico, and then you've got Cuba kind of slotted in there in the Norseca region. So all in all, I'm going to be putting Cuba also in the hyper tier. And I think this is, of all of the teams that I've put in, they have the most potential to move up, but they also have some of the most potential to move down depending on what happens. But it's tough. We know it's tough. It's outside of the hands of the volleyball people and really just in the hands of the politicians, and that's never an easy position to be in. Next up in the C's, we have Czechia. Now, Czechia is a country that is somewhat relevant on the international stage, but they're just not quite there just yet. They got 22nd in the world on the men's side, 18th in the world on the women's side. So not quite there. Of course, they play in Europe. If they played anywhere else, they'd be much stronger, obviously, but just not quite there. 8th is their highest men's team on the beach. 16th is the highest for the women. Their pro league, give them a C, a solid C. And I think C is actually quite solid when you think about the top leagues and then the second tier seeds and then the third tier seeds. I think Karlovarsko has had a pretty good run in the past few years in the Champions League and then the CEV Cup, but just on the women's side, they're not too relevant. And I think their volleyball culture is actually pretty good. So I gave them a B there. Overall, for Czechia, though, just not really being relevant on the international indoor stage just quite yet. I think their culture, as I said, their culture is pretty good. They have some fantastic players, and they've developed some good players, but just hasn't worked up just anything internationally. On the indoor side, we're going to put them in the mega tier. Next up, we have our neighbors to the far south, also in NORCECA, the Dominican Republic. And now Dominican is one of those countries that I talked about at the beginning, that they're really, really good in one aspect, right? There's no doubt about it. The women's team is one of the best teams in the world. They're currently ranked 9th. We've seen them really explode over the past decade, and it's really just a prime example of what happens when a country puts a lot of resources into a team. Now, how they've done it is maybe questionable depending on who you ask, but still, I think you need to give ups to the Queens of the Caribbean, as they call themselves, for what they've done. However, once you go past that, it struggles. The men's team, it's tough to watch. I think you got Tapia on the right side. He's fantastic, but he's getting a little bit older. And to me, having watched them at the Pan Am Cup this past year, I don't really know where they're going. And they're not relevant on the beach at all. I don't think they have a pro league, so I gave them an F for that. And overall, I gave them a D in terms of culture. You're really, really good in one aspect, but got nothing else everywhere else. So unfortunately, I would like to see this be a little bit better. We're going to put Dominican and the Queens of the Caribbean down there in the thanks for participating category. Let's have a cookie on your way out. Next up, we have the Dutch. The Netherlands, all in all, I think is a pretty good volleyball country. I really do. You got 13th on the men's side, of course, Demir, one of the best players in the world, but you got some solid players around him. 12th on the women's side, and that's probably even pretty low for the Dutch women. Usually we see them a little bit higher. And then on the beach, they're fantastic. 3rd on the men's side, 4th on the women's side, and they've got many teams kind of in there. All in all, like, I think the Netherlands is pretty damn good. Their pro leagues aren't the greatest. You know, we see quite a few of their, like all of their best athletes kind of leave and go play elsewhere, but at least they have a pro league, so I gave them a C in that. I think their culture is actually really, really good. They develop some good players. They clearly love the sport. I mean, when you look at the history of the sport too, how strong the Netherlands were kind of in the 90s and the early 2000s, they developed some great developmental programming in terms of spike ball and this and that. And they also put a lot of money into hosting events, both indoor and beach. So I gave them an A for culture. Overall, I think we're going to put the Netherlands up here in the hyper tier. Funny enough, no A tier teams just yet, or really super tier. All right, next up is Egypt. Once again, Egypt, one of those countries that does well in one department, and that's men's indoor. And you could make the argument that they might not be relevant if they weren't playing in that African zone. And 20th on the men's side, not ranked on the women's side, no representation on the beach. On the pro side, it's all right. You've got the one club, Al Ali, who just dominates all the time, where basically their national team plays. Culture, I wouldn't say it's that great either. So Egypt is going to be going down in the thank you for participating tier. Next up, we have Finland. Now, Finland is a country that I think if I had done this maybe 10 years ago would probably get a higher rank, but as of late, they've been struggling a little bit. 24th on the men's side, and once again, playing in Europe, it's always tough, but just not really relevant. They make it to the European Championships, and that's about it. I mean, this used to be a World League team, right? This used to be a team that developed some good players, but we've just really seen them fall off as of late. 24th on the men's side, 40th on the women's side. No representation for the men really on the beach, but on the women, they are 17th. Their pro leagues, I would say, are all right, especially on the men's side. Maybe not so much as of late due to COVID. And culture, I'm going to give them a C. You know, I don't think they care all that much about volleyball as much as they do, say, hockey. Finland, for me, that is going to be a mega team coming in here in the C tier. All right, moving on to France. Now, France, I mean, hey, on the men's side especially, you have to think it's one of the top countries. They won the Olympics back in 2020 or 2021. French men's volleyball is truly just the cream of the crop. The athletes that they produce, the systems that they have in place, some of the best in the world. The women, not as good. Of course, if we look at the rankings, men are 3rd, women 21st. Not in VNL, not really relevant. When you look at the beach side, they're all right. 16th for the men, 15th for the women. That's decent. I would like to see them get better, especially as they're hosting the Olympics coming up. But when you look at their pro leagues, I think their pro leagues are a solid B tier, right? They're quality all the way through on the men's and women's. They've got good competition. Of course, we saw Toulouse make a decent run last year in the CEV Cup. We saw Valero Le Canet on the women's side do a really good job in the Champions League this year. And culture, I think it's among the top in terms of how they develop athletes, in terms of how much they care about volleyball. So for me, France has to be the first super level team that we have here on this tier list. All right, moving forward, Germany. Germany now, solid all around. This is a country that has some good pro leagues. The Bundesliga is quite strong. I would say I would give them a B tier in the Bundesliga. Beach, this is one of the strongest countries for beach with, you know, the amount of teams that they have. I think their beach tour is, I wouldn't call it the best national tour because I think that has to go to the AVP, and then you probably have the Brazilian tour in there as well, but it's definitely, it's 100% in the top 5, probably in the top 3 to me. And they've produced so many great players. They've really invested a lot into beach volleyball as of late. We had the World Championships there back in 2019 in Hamburg. Of course, Bounce House and the fantastic work that they do for German volleyball is incredible. They produce some pretty good players. Indoor-wise, it's not quite there as much. You'd like to see those results maybe a little bit better from Germany. 17th on the men's side, which I thought was actually quite low. I really thought that was quite low, maybe just struggling a little bit. The European Championships, not having the best Nations League. They killed it in Ottawa last year, first weekend, and then just everything went downhill from there. So Germany, I'm going to be putting in the B tier. Moving forward, Iran. Iran is another one where they care only about one thing and one thing only, and that's men's volleyball. I'm not even going to be touching the fact that women allegedly can't enter stadiums in Iran to watch volleyball. I just don't know enough about it. I'd love to learn more. So if you're an Iranian fan who has more insight on that, just drop us a line, comment it down below, join the Discord, and let me know about it, because I'd love to know more about all of that, but I just don't want to speak on it without knowing. But Iran, of course, the men's team, quite as much as like the Dominican Republic on the women's side, has just grown so much, and the quality of their team has just improved so much over the past decade. And you know, they play with so much passion and fire, and I definitely thought this next, like I thought they were going to fall with Maruf and all of that great generation kind of moving on, but they've really sustained it. Was really surprised with them in VNL and throughout the World Championships. So that being said, no representation, of course, on the women's side. I don't know if they have a women's national team. I think I've seen it kind of here and there, just clips and stuff like that. But, and of course, we know the political situation for women in Iran as well. And then no representation whatsoever on the beach. The pro teams, I think C might even be a little bit high, mostly because I always remember the fact that Trinity Western went to the World Club Championships, represented North America back in 2012, and they won a match, and this was against an Iranian team. I know that they go to the World Championships, but the fact that they went out and got Namir and Simon and all these fantastic players to play for the Iranian teams at the Asian Club Championships in the spring to qualify for the World Club Championships in December just doesn't do it for me, and then they go to wherever it is and just get slapped. For me, Iran, I'm going to be putting them, and this might be even a little bit high, but I'm going to be putting them in the mega tier. Fantastic on the men's side, some of the best volleyball we've seen over the past decade on the men's side, but just nothing else past that. All right, now we're getting into some of the big teams here. Italy, another no-brainer, right? Best league in the world, hands down, for the men and the women. I know we haven't really seen the Champions League level this year, as there's no doubt about it that the quality top to bottom in Italy is still the best, and it's still one of the highest paying leagues as well. Their culture is fantastic, and then when you get into how good their teams perform, I mean, let's be honest, their men are ranked second in the world, and their women are ranked second in the world. The men, current European and world champions. The women, just always on the cusp there. Their culture through and through is fantastic. They produce some of the best players in the world. I don't really need to go into it. You already know who they are. They're some of the biggest stars we have. So for me, it's a no-brainer. You put Italy anywhere other than the S tier, and you're just done. Okay? You're just dumb, bruv. Now, this next one is one that is truly a game time decision for me. I'm going to be deciding right here because I think Japan, in terms of culture, might have the best volleyball culture around. How the entire country truly gets behind and the weight that they have. You know I rag on Volleyball World for really trying to push towards Japanese volleyball quite a bit, but at the end of the day, it's because they love the sport. One of their most popular animes, of course, we all know Haiku, is massive around the world, and it has helped grow the sport so much. And I mean, that's definitely going to be a video topic for another video. And I know the Out of System boys have talked about it quite a bit recently too, but I really think that Haiku is the best volleyball media that we have in terms of culturally, that and then Top Gun. Just how much they care about the sport and how much money they put behind it, how many events that they host, and just the popularity of the sport top to bottom, I think is really, truly unparalleled anywhere else in the world. Of course, results-wise, they're not necessarily the best. 7th for the men, 6th for the women, 12th for the women on the beach. I couldn't find any men's team on the beach. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but just the quality of the play, how they play the game is just so beautiful. I really love it. I know I've ragged on Japan a lot on the Volleyball Source podcast, and just because they get so much acclaim and so much attention that just gets a little annoying sometimes. Oh, this is a really tough one. My head tells me to put Japan in the super tier, but my heart tells me to put Japan in the ultra tier, just because of I think I'm just gonna do it. I think just what they mean to the game and how much they help grow the game. I think I'm gonna put them in the ultra tier. And now I know some of you are gonna get upset at me for that, but hey, that's what I feel. And as I said from the beginning, this list is biased. All right, moving forward to Mexico. And Mexico is a country that surprisingly, culture-wise, loves volleyball. They host a lot of events. They're going to be hosting the Beach Volleyball World Championships later in the fall this year. I'm hoping to go down to that. When they host events, they get big crowds, and a lot of Mexican fans watch my videos. However, the results just don't necessarily line up for them, unfortunately. I think, we saw their men's team get a big win over Bulgaria at the World Championships. I love the way they play. They play fast. They're very skilled, but they're just very undersized. They're kind of poor man's Japan in a way, in some ways, but a very poor man's Japan. That's not saying anything about their economic status in the world. It's just they're not quite there. So for me, Mexico, I apologize, 18th in the world for the men, 20th in the world for the women, and that women's ranking is truly inflated just because they play within NORCECA. But I'm going to be putting Mexico in the mega tier because I think they do some good things, but ultimately the results just aren't there. All right, Norway. Now, Norway, just to be perfectly clear, Norway is only here and they're only on this list because of beach volleyball and because of how good the beach volleyball Vikings have been. They're not really relevant on the indoor stage. Their women's beach teams are meh. Right, they're the number one in the world for beach men, but when you look at indoor, 53 for the men, 50th for the women. They do have pro leagues, meh, they're all right. They're not great. Overall, great job for building the beach volleyball Vikings. It's been so much fun to watch, but you need to figure it out in some other way. So Norway is going to go down in the D tier. Poland, I mean, clearly. No, I'm completely joking. Obviously, they're going to go up in the S tier. Just what can I say about Polish volleyball? It's truly a dream of mine to be able to go to Poland and watch matches. I mean, I've seen Polish matches here in Canada, and you guys filled our stadiums with the fact that you have your two top teams competing in the Champions League finals for the men is incredible. They host so much. Poland to me is just a no-brainer. They've done a lot for volleyball, and they can truly to push it, and I love how they're starting to challenge. They're getting better on the women's side as well. 10th on the women's, 1st in the world on the men's, and then 7th as well on the beach, and 25th. I couldn't find any women's teams, but maybe I just didn't look hard enough. Another volleyball country that is so strong has to be Russia, and let's just go and put them right in the S tier. Obviously, we haven't seen them internationally for a little bit now, but that's due to political reasons, not for volleyball reasons, so we can't fault them for not being relevant on the international stage. just from a volleyball side of things. Their pro leagues are some of the best in the world. They play some of the best, most money in the world. Their athletes are some of the best in the world as well, both on the indoor and on the beach as well. And then culturally, when you look at some of the top teams around the world, they're oftentimes former Soviet countries, Cuba and Bulgaria and Serbia. Traditionally, they're one of the most dominant teams. The former Soviet Union was one of the most dominant programs that we've seen for a long time. With that, I know politically they're not people's favorite at the moment, but they have to be up there in the S tier. There's no doubt about that. Next up is Serbia. Now, Serbia is just, as we said, one of those Eastern Bloc teams, but Serbia's volleyball pedigree, you can't be questioned. They're the defending world champions on the women's side. On the men's side, they're currently ranked 11th, but they're always dangerous. I think their culture is an A-level culture. They're so good. They're not really relevant on the beach side for some reason. I don't know why that is. They just do volleyball really well, and they clearly love it. To me, they're not quite at that ultra tier level. They don't host enough events. They're not really relevant on the beach. Their men's team is kind of in that second tier of teams. So Serbia, for me, is going in the super tier. Finally, someone alongside France there. Next up, we have Slovenia. Similar flag, different country. Slovenia now, what can we say about their run this past year, the World Championships? It was probably aided a little bit by the fact that they were hosts, maybe a lot, just in terms that they got preferential schedules and got to play at home and all of this stuff. But that still can't be doubted that this was kind of the end, maybe the end of a run of a fantastic men's program that we've seen once again over the past decade. How many silver medals do they have at the European Championships? How relevant have they been on the international stage? They've been so good, and they've produced some fantastic players over the past years and continue to do so. 9th on the men's side, 25th on the women's side, 30th. That's the highest women's team we could find for Slovenia. Once you get to their pro teams and culture and stuff like that, I know that they hosted, but other than their national team, we didn't really see much from Slovenia in terms of crowd sizes, just because they're very one-sided on the men, in my opinion. Not much relevance on the beach. And I think I'd expect a little bit more from them. Maybe this is kind of a Bulgaria scenario as well. I'm going to be putting them in the mega tier. Of course, very, very good on the men's side, but just not that even and well-rounded. And this you have to be even and well-rounded to be featured on this list. Okay, next up we have South Korea. Now, this one is interesting. Of course, I talked about it a little bit earlier. Not a challenger team at the VNL. On the women's side, because they pay their way to be there. They get to host. It's kind of a sore point for me. I'm not gonna lie. I think they need to be better, especially for how much they care about the sport. I think their culture is actually really good. They have a pretty good, a decent pro league. I give them a C-level pro league. You can go and make a lot of money in Korea, and they've got some fantastic fans, and the fans and the culture love the sport, and you love to see that. But just ultimately, not the greatest internationally. Currently, they are ranked 34th on the men's side, 23rd on the women's side, and I think that is just going to fall some more on the women's side and not really there relevant on the beach at all. So for me, Korea, we're going into the mega tier. Just start winning some games. Only winning 4 sets at the VNL last year wasn't pretty. I know you guys lost some of your players due to bullying allegations back from 8th grade. Once again, that's a political decision, has nothing to do with volleyball. I'm looking for results here, Korea, right? We need some results. For me, for how much you guys put into volleyball, you need to get something a little bit more out of it, all right? Okay, we're getting down to the final ones here, and this is a country that has really grown on me in terms of the volleyball world over the past few years. I think if there's one country that has really been on the up recently, it has to be Turkey. Now, big ups to them. A big situation with two Turkish teams in the finals of the Champions League for the women. That's absolutely massive. You'd love to see it. I don't think their pro league on the women's side is as strong top to bottom from Italy, but there's no way that you can't tell me with 3 teams in the semifinals of the Champions League that it's not a top pro league in the world. So it's definitely getting there, and I think their women's team as well has really been pushing the envelope quite a bit. So for pro, I give them an A. For culture, I also gave them an A. But when you look at the standings, and yes, I know Turkish fans are going to remind me Turkey kicked Canada out, of the World Championships this past year, and I will give big up for that Turkish program. They're producing some fantastic athletes. Adis Lukumja has been fantastic this year playing for Modena. I didn't think he was going to be able to last the year because we've seen him kind of fizzle out due to injuries, but he's been really, really good. And I think that your men's team is on the rise and is a team that is next up to go into the VNL, having lost to Cuba in the finals last year of the Volleyball Challenger Cup. All of that being said, they're not quite, the results just aren't quite there yet to be one of those ultra teams. So we're going to be putting them in the super tier alongside Serbia and France. Also, just to close it out on the beach side, no women's teams, but their highest men's team is ranked 43rd. So that needs to be a little bit better, Turkey. Come on, you guys are a hot country. You're in the Mediterranean. Let's pick it up on the beach side a little bit, okay? I know you can do it. You've clearly got some interest in the sport. You're clearly investing into the sport. So yeah, let's just pick it up a little bit. All right, finally, we have to end with the creators of the sport, where it started it all. Now, USA, obviously, when it comes to quality, when it comes to competitions, they're always going to be there, right? Indoor, beach, men, women. When you're going up against the Stars and Stripes, you know it's going to be a struggle at any level, no doubt about it. 6th in the world for men, 4th in the world for the women. Of course, they are the defending champs from Tokyo at the Olympics. A little bit disappointing in VNL and in the World Championships last year. In terms of quality of players that they create, some of the best players in the world, no doubt about it. I think the NCAA women is one of the best breeding grounds for volleyball in the world, and that's why we see so many internationals play there. But when you look at the overall culture for USA in terms of event hosting, Shreveport, that's sad. You look at the VNL finals a few years in Chicago that they had a hard time filling out, and just the fact that, especially on the men's side, not even 50% of the states support it as a high school sport. And men's volleyball is the least supported sport in all the NCAA, just in terms of scholarship opportunities and the amount of institutions that carry it. For me, like, your culture is only a C level. A little bit better than Canada, I'll give you that, especially with the presence of the AVP, whereas we don't have anything. Our athletes have to go get green cards if they want to compete anywhere but the FIVB Tour, the NORCECA Tour. Then when you look at the pro level, no leagues. No leagues. And yes, Rob, I know you're going to watch this. I know you're going to say, hey, there's the VLA, there's the NVA, there's things in the works on the women's side, which I'm really excited about, really excited about, but it's just not there yet. Okay? AU Pro, I'm sorry. You're not a real pro league. For beach, they have to be some of the best. For the longest time, it was only USA and Brazil that was medaling at the Olympics. So many of the most dominant athletes all time to have played. Their highest men's team was ranked 34th, and that's obviously just an anomaly because of how many switchings and different things have been going on. Try and came, which is once again half American, half Canadian. Let's not get into that. I think are going to be really good. And then the women's team, they just have so many options. 7th, 8th, and 11th overall in the world for the women. 34 for the men, which isn't great. But all in all, I think USA for me has to go into the super tier. I think I have to put USA into the super tier just because once you guys get some pro leagues, once they start making a bigger impact in the sport and creating a little bit more culture, as I said, I'm really excited about it. It just has to happen. So once that happens, I can't wait for it. Okay, and then we can bump you up with everyone else. All right, that is going to be it. I think that was fun. I think that went well. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Am I way off base here? Are you never going to watch my channel again because you think I'm an idiot? Who knows? Let me know. As I said, you can just type in the volleyball countries tier list, and if not, I'm going to be putting this as a link in our link section over on the Discord. Check it out. Let me know. Do one yourself. Should we add countries? Should we take any away? Let me know. All right, guys. Thank you very much. We will see you again for another volleyball video here from Volleyball Source. Peace.